Welcome to today's episode of The Bald Book Geek. Like, sub, do the usual. If you want uncensored versions of these videos, exclusive early access, and more, check out my Patreon page. And also, for exclusive content on YouTube, consider becoming a member. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and let's start the show. If you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you will know that I absolutely love Dune. Dune is Frank Herbert's literary classic. I enjoy all the books, actually, even the ones that were written with his son, and I mean, it's such a thought-provoking and deep book, and I do love people just writing the book off as some kind of white saviour story without actually understanding the broader complexities of the whole thing. But I'm not going to go into the book. I'm not going to sit here and go into the book because we'll be here for a very long time, and I don't think you guys need me for 4 hours waxing lyrical about one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. But I do want to talk about the adaptations. And I'm not going to talk about the recent ones, I've done that already, but I'm going to talk about the 3 other screen adaptations. I will also add there's been a trading card game, a failed attempt at making a film, which I'm going to give its own video because that's a long road to go down, and there's a lot to talk about there. So I'm going to just talk about the 3 finished adaptations that I think you guys will be interested in. Technically, one of them is an adaptation of book 2 and 3, but it's still worth talking about. There's also been copious amounts of video games. I make you laugh. I played the Dune video game in 2000, and it's a clunky mess, but it's a very pretty clunky mess. The controls. Whoever thought that was a good idea really needs to check themselves. So first things first, there was the 1984 Dune. This has some of the best casting. I think Carl Mallochland, however you say his last name, is beautiful in the role. He's a very beautiful man, especially when he was younger, and it shows in this. He has a very fragile look to him, and he does fit the Paul look, I think. And, you know, you have people like Patrick Stewart show up, and Sting, for some unknown reason, is in it. I have no clue why Sting is in it, but Sting is in it. And he actually does a good job. So, let's talk about it. This film is a mixed bag. While it's not a good adaptation of the book, and you can definitely tell the studio wanted to condense everything down in 2 hours, there is a lot of stuff in this film that it tries, and you can definitely tell, as David Lynch wasn't really there and admitted he sold out during the time when he made it. There is talk that he might revisit it in some way because there are multiple versions. We'll talk about that as well. But it's a gorgeous film. I mean, the special effects mostly look good. I mean, it's 80 sets built on 16 sound stages. It had a crew of 1,700 and it had over 2,000 extras. I mean, that's a huge number. It's a very lavish production. I think the costume design, which I did something for an art school, was also spectacular. There is no if, buts and maybes about that. The costume design was spectacular, and I think it really showed in the final production. I think the costumes do stand out in this film. Also, the soundtrack's good. The music, I want to give kudos to the score. I listened to that album a lot. It's nice background noise. The score is stunning. I mean, without post-production, the original cut of the film, the rough cut, is 4 hours long, but Lynch's intended cut, which reflected the 7th final draft of the script, was almost 3 hours long. I'm using Wikipedia as a source here. Universal wanted the film to be a 2-hour cut, and it was pretty, you can tell. Some film new scenes, or constructed plot elements, and added a voiceover. it was, I mean, Lynch, according to rumours and things flying around, Lynch had no say in had no other version after the theatrical cut. And the theatrical cut suffers badly. Now, there is a television version that was aired in 2 parts in '88, and it's 185, 6 minutes, and it replaces the opening monologue, which I hate, with a longer description of the setting using concept stills, which seems a little bit odd. It's like an added intro. Lynch had his name removed off this version. He was not happy with it. And there is an extended and television versions also take out his name because they're not his version. There are several longer versions that have been spliced together. There are particularly 2 versions that I want to talk about. One for a San Francisco station called KTVY, and the other 178 fan edit, which was done by scratch from Spice Driver. The latter cut, again this is Wikipedia, was officially released on behalf of the international copyrights holder, Lionsgate, on a deluxe 4K/Blu-ray box set in Germany in 2001. I own this box set. It is a spectacular thing. It combines footage from the theatrical and television versions, and it downplays the repeated footage in the TV cut. They've also discovered quite recently never-before-seen deleted scenes that were released in Restore in March 24. They've also reconstructed the original ending of the film more in line with the source text from that. It's a stunning version, and I own this set. It includes multiple versions. There's 3 cuts of the film on this set, and it's quite interesting watching the differences between them. Lynch was approached for a director's cut but declined the offer, and he prefers not to discuss Dune. Although he has admitted that he's interested in the idea, and a quote from him, he offered the caveat that did not believe that it would ever happen, nor anything in the unseen footage would satisfy him enough for a director's cut. As he said, selling out during production. Nevertheless, he said enough time has passed that he was at least curious to take another look at the footage. There was a cancelled sequel because of the underperformance of this. I own... The film has been released on DVD and Blu-ray multiple times, North America and United Kingdom by Arrow Films, and that was ahead of the release of Dune, the 21 adaptation. This release only contains the theatrical cut, and Universal removed the extended cut from circulation in North America, following the DVD going out of print, denying Arrow's request to license this cut of the film. We don't know if that's true, citation is needed. Another film company has also released with what fans consider to be the more definitive multi-disc edition, only available in Germany, although it does have English audio on it, and it contains 3 of the 4 versions, theatrical, TV, and Spice Driver fan edit, plus supplementary material and a CD soundtrack. That's where I got the soundtrack, by the way. I had a bootleg of it, but I finally got the proper thing, and it's rather complete and glorious. It's a very weird film. There was a junior novelization, which is a bit of a collector's item, and if you ever want to laugh, look at some of the toys relating to this movie. It's funny and somewhat creepy, and there's also a comic adaptation. I think this film, as a standalone film, is brilliant. The longer cut, the fan cut, the Spice Driver version, is the definitive version of the movie, and it really does show. And it's just really well done. There is no way around it. And I think it's just a strong film. That's the word for it. It's a strong film, but the theatrical cut suffers from feeling very rushed and very weird in places. Now we come to the television. There was a 3-part TV series created in the early 2000s, and you can get this on DVD and an extended cut which appeared in 22. This is probably closer to the source material, but they called it a faithful adaptation, but it definitely adds new plots, it brings some characters to it, and it kind of, it feels a little bit hap-handed. It suffers from the problems of being something for the Sci-Fi Channel in the early 2000s. Although I will say, the special effects in that series are fantastic for the era. I was actually surprised rewatching it. It's not a complete adaptation in any sense, and I think Dune doesn't lend itself to film just because of the things. Maybe a Game of Thrones style TV series would work better for Dune. I've always said this. And it does do what a lot of adaptations do. It takes out some of the more deeper themes, the spiritual elements and so on. It's a good standalone television series, and it was quite expensive at the time. There is no way around it. It was quite an expensive television show, and it shows. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it rattles on because of the additional plots and sort of the expanding of characters which didn't really need to be there. That's where it got frustrating for me. It's one of the highest rated programs ever broadcast on the Sci-Fi Channel, though. It's definitely a stronger adaptation, but it didn't reach the spectacular heights, to quote one of the reviewers. The thing that struck me, though, is you can see where the budget went. It went on the special effects. There are barely any extras. Some of the battle scenes and some of the stuff that would require a lot of extras is told via flashbacks with like 4 people and a stick. The budget went on the CGI, and I will say whoever did the special effects work for the eyes really needs to learn about timing them because they seem to be random. But it is actually a nice adaptation that I enjoyed, but I don't think it comes close to the book. Now this is where we get complicated. There is Children of Dune, which was Sci-Fi Channel again, and it again won Primetime Emmy for special effects. I mean, the special effects are stunning. It's a sequel to that miniseries, but it combines 2 novels, Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, and Children of Dune is predominantly condensed into the final episode, and I don't know. It's weird, and it's far less timed. The pacing, that's the word. The pacing irritates me in this version. Because it's 2 books squashed together, I think it does a good job with that material, but it shows in the pacing, it shows in a lot of the dialogue, and it shows in a lot of the, again, it suffers from prime Sci-Fi Channel thing. Although Susan Sarandon is surprisingly good in it, and a very young James McAvoy plays in it, so that's quite a fun one to do. I think the casting is really good, and I think the actors give really good performances. There is no way around that. Like, the cast give fantastic performances, but it definitely suffers from budget. It suffers from condensing a plot that's 2 massive books together, and I think it's quite weak as an overall thing, but it's an interesting spectacle to watch, and that's where I'll leave that one. I don't have much to say on it because it's kind of forgettable. That's the best way to describe it. It's kind of forgettable, and but the performances are really good. Then we come into the other adaptations of the work that I'm only going to cover briefly, because some of them I haven't played, some of them I have. These are video games. And I did mention Frank Herbert's Dune, based on the TV series. But what I will say is that game was it was only released on PlayStation 2 in Europe, and I have the PlayStation 2 version. It suffers from really weird controls, and it's an okay game. There are mods available online if you want to play the PC version. I will put that one out there. But it's an interesting... It hasn't aged well, and it's an interesting game to play. Although the cutscenes still look okay, considering. It's one of those games. It's really annoying, and the controls are absolutely disastrous. Full 3D world with Resident Evil style controls doesn't work. Let's be honest. So then you've got Battle of Dune, which was a real-time strategy game, which it has live action cutscenes with actors. And I've played a little bit of it, but I don't like strategy games. They bore me no end, to say the least on the subject. They bore me. Yeah. They do. I get bored with them really easily. Then there was, more recently, the 4K real-time strategy Spice Wars, which, again, another strategy game which I have no interest in. I didn't dip my... It just... yeah. I don't like strategy games. I really don't. And I know that's a complicated thing to say, and quite an unpopular opinion, but I don't like strategy games. I don't like how they function. And finally, there was a card game. The card game is oddly pretty. It's out of print, and it was originally by Five Rings Game Group, and then it was later Wizards of the Coast. Little thing, I own every single card from this set. It's extremely valuable, and it's rather pretty. I've never played it, because by the time I found it at a junk sale in a box, and without realising it had every card imaginable. Now, just to say this, there are some prequels to Dune, which are written by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, and they're set within the expanded universe of Dune. And they take place in varying things, and people have a love-hate relationship with them. I actually really enjoy them. They're also known as the prelude to Dune trilogy, and they're very worth picking up if you want a little bit of a thing. And then you've got the Legend of Dune series, the Great Schools of Dune, and the Heroes of Dune. And then there's another trilogy, and they're all actually worth reading, but they don't, for me personally, they don't come close to the original trilogy. I think they lack a distinct vibe that is missing from the book. And I'll briefly touch upon the book. I wasn't going to do that, but I will say, give it a read. I have the Sci-Fi Masterworks version, which is a horrible cheap hardback, by the way. And it is a long book. It's 896 pages, but it's absolutely phenomenal. And the way that it's written, you can put it down, you can pick it up, and you can enjoy it how you enjoy it. It's written in that way. The chapters are they're not self-contained, but there is enough happening that it's easy to pick up the threads again. So maybe it's just because I like books that are quite dense. I mean, when it comes to adaptations, I think Dune suffers from the problem of many books like that. They are this huge thing. There is a lot of layers, a lot of story, a lot of characters, a lot of subplot, a lot of very, very deep stuff going on. And I think when they adapt the work, they do tend to strip that out. But again, unless it's a Game of Thrones style television series, I don't know how it would work. The recent films as adaptations, and I'm again touching upon them, I think were visually very stunning and enjoyable movies. I think part 1 was better than part 2. But again, they kind of emasculated it a little bit, and they stripped out a lot of the stuff that makes Dune Dune. And and they do this with every adaptation, so I don't think it's possible necessarily to adapt the whole thing. I mean, you would have to do a very long book per season type show, I think, to get it right, and you would need writers that knew how to do it. I always say this as someone who has read those books. You have the original series, which is, you've got the Emperor of Dune, and then you go down to, I mean, there is a whole list of these great books, and it's such a rich world and a rich tapestry. I don't think films do it justice. Although when I read books, and this sounds weird, I picture the book in my head. That's a thing that most people don't realise, is I picture the book in my head. And that's how I read, so it plays out like a film. And in my brain has put together the books with the imagery from the 1984 film. I don't know why, maybe it's the version I'm most aware of, but that's where my brain goes whenever I read them. I mean, it's a huge series, and a very deep series, and I don't know how they will adapt them. So Dune Part 1 and Part 2, again, not going too much into things, I will say is they're definitely better than the previous adaptations. That's a good way to describe it. They are better than the previous adaptations. I'm disappointed they didn't do a extended cut for Blu-ray, DVD and streaming, because I feel like there's a lot they missed or breezed over, and again, the deeper themes. I wouldn't mind a 3-hour cut of that movie at all, but they're long films anyway. I mean, they're 165 minutes, so they're long films, but take that to a 3.5 hour cut spread across, or episodically cut up. I think it would work a lot better. Although I do like the casting. I think Timothée Chalamet is a really good Paul Atreides. But I feel like these books in adaptation will never be 100%. And I find that sad. I think it's a huge series. There is a huge, huge series. And it's set in a very, very distant future, far away from now. Far, far away from where we are. I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of years. Earth is long forgotten, although it is briefly mentioned. I mean, the book series stretches, well, if you want the honest truth, it has a history that stretches 15,000 years in total. And that's just a very small dip in a much bigger pond. And it's just this epic, big, structured thing. And one of the big themes is heroism. And just kind of the Middle Eastern and Islamic influences. And a lot of historical influences from the Hebrews to the Greeks, to the Persians, to the Romans, to the Egyptians, to the Babylonians. It all comes through, and, you know, this whole thing, the text is surprisingly spiritual in theme in places. So there is a huge list. There's also graphic novels, by the way. But there's a huge list of this world, and I think just creating Dune as a whole on screen is surprisingly difficult. It's a huge thing, and it always will be. As someone that loves Frank Herbert, I will say, and he's written other books besides Dune, by the way, I think sometimes books never quite work on screen. That's being really honest. And then you look at his works, his ideas, his themes, and I could, again, wax lyrical about them, but I'm going to save that for another video, that you realise that Dune is probably one of the most influential pieces of science fiction ever created. A lot of sci-fi owes its existence to Dune, and it shows. like the themes, the look, the style, it all comes through, and it is this huge, huge thing. And adaptations are very hit and miss, but perfectly enjoyable. And I hope you guys like this. This is just an overview video, because we'll be here for a week. And like, sub, do the usual. And if you join my Patreon, you'll get uncensored videos much earlier, and exclusive content. I also have a second channel, which is linked to my link tree as well. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day.